8. The Admiral Graf Spee. The Admiral Graf Spee was a German warship that mainly served in the Atlantic Ocean during the start of World War II. It was one of the 3 Deutschland-class cruisers, or pocket battleships, that were designed to outgun any enemy ship they met. The ship was named after Maximilian von Spee, a German admiral who died during the Battle of the Falkland Islands back in World War I. It was officially launched in 1934 and commissioned in 1936. It had a displacement weight of 14,890 tons and a length of 610 feet. It could reach speeds up to 28.5 knots. It was armed with 6 11-inch guns, 8 6-inch guns, 8 torpedo tubes, and even an aircraft catapult. Admiral Graf Spee's main goal was to disrupt the Allied merchant shipping that supplied all of Britain and France with vital resources and materials for the war. It operated as a commerce raider, attacking and sinking enemy ships while avoiding confrontation with superior naval forces. Between September and December 1939, it sank 9 Allied merchant ships in the South Atlantic and Northern Indian Oceans. Admiral Graf Spee's most famous fight was the Battle of the River Plate on December 13, 1939. It met face-to-face with a British naval squadron built of 3 cruisers, HMS Exeter, HMS Ajax, and HMS Achilles. The battle stretched on for about an hour, and the Admiral Graf Spee inflicted heavy damage on the Exeter and some moderate damage on the Ajax and Achilles. The ship also suffered significant damage to its fuel system and main battery line. The Graf Spee retreated to the neutral port of Montevideo in Uruguay, where it was able to stay for 4 days and make repairs. But the British used deception and diplomacy tactics to convince their captain, Hans Langsdorff, that he faced overwhelming odds if he tried to break out of the port. Langsdorff decided to sink his ship on December 17, 1939 to stop it from falling into enemy hands. He later took his own life, unable to live with the failure. The Admiral Graf Spee was an important symbol of German naval power and pride during World War II. Its exploits caused fear and anxiety among the country's enemies and boosted the morale of German soldiers and citizens. Its loss was a huge blow to the Kriegsmarine and a propaganda victory for the British and Allied forces. 7. Operation Barclay. In order to trick the Axis powers during their invasion of Sicily back in July 1943, the Allies thought up Operation Barclay during World War II. They wanted the Axis-aligned countries to think that they might attack Corsica, Sardinia, or Greece, not Sicily, which was the obvious target. The main deception tactic was to create a fake British 12th Army in the eastern Mediterranean region, which would supposedly invade Greece and join forces with the Turk and the Soviet armaments in the Balkans. The Allies used fake troop movements, radio traffic, maps, and even interpreters to make this army seem as real as possible. The Allies also staged multiple diversion attacks to support their lies. One of them was Operation Mincemeat, where they used a dead body with false documents and planted it in Spain, suggesting that the Allies would attack Sardinia and Corsica. Another one was Operation Waterfall, where a fake invasion fleet was quickly built up in Libya. The deception plans worked well. The Axis truly believed that the Allies had more forces in the eastern Mediterranean than they really did, so they reinforced their own troops in the Balkans and Italy. They also diverted their naval and air forces to cover the wrong areas. When the Allies actually invaded Sicily on July 10, 1943, they achieved a major surprise attack and faced less resistance than originally expected. Operation Barclay was one of the most successful deception operations in all of World War II. It showed how the Allies used intelligence, creativity, and cooperation in order to trick their enemies and gain the upper hand. 6. The Manhattan Project. During World War II, the United States led a secret project to make the first nuclear weapons. The project was officially dubbed the Manhattan Project, and it started in 1939 when President Franklin D. Roosevelt realized that Nazi Germany could be developing a similar weapon. The project involved thousands of scientists, engineers, military officials, and civilians from the United States, the United Kingdom, and even Canada. They worked mainly under the supervision of Major General Leslie Groves from the US Army Corps of Engineers and a nuclear physicist named Robert Oppenheimer. The main objectives of the project were to enrich uranium and produce plutonium, the two substances capable of causing nuclear fission. The project also designed and tested out the destructive weapons themselves. The Manhattan Project had many sites for research and production in the United States and its allied countries, but the most classified one was Los Alamos Laboratory, which was based in New Mexico. This was where Oppenheimer and his team of scientists worked on the weapon design. The project also performed several atomic tests, the most famous being the Trinity test, which took place on July 16, 1945. It was the first official explosion of a nuclear weapon. The project spent nearly $2 billion and employed about 130,000 people at its peak operation period. It produced two kinds of nuclear weapons: a gun-type weapon called Little Boy that used uranium-235 and an implosion weapon called Fat Man that used plutonium-239. These weapons were later used in the tragic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan on August 6th and 9th, 1945. Hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives in these attacks that essentially ended World War II. The Manhattan Project was one of the greatest scientific and technological achievements in all of human history, but also one of the most controversial and destructive ones ever. 5. Operation Paperclip. Operation Paperclip was a secret US intelligence program that brought 1,600 German and Austrian scientists over to the US after the end of World War II. The goal of the program was to use their expertise for military and industrial innovation and to stop them from falling into the hands of the Soviet Union. Operation Paperclip was a continuation of an earlier mission by the US and British forces to interrogate German scientists and engineers during the war effort. They discovered valuable information on technology such as rocketry, jet propulsion, biological and chemical weapons, and more. One of the most important documents they discovered was the Ossenberg List, a catalogue of scientists who worked for the Nazis. The program was authorized by Harry Truman in 1946, but he banned the recruitment of any active war criminals. This rule was often ignored by officials who were in charge of the operation. They erased or altered evidence of the scientists' Nazi affiliations or atrocities they'd committed to gain the upper hand over Russia. One of the most famous scientists brought to the US was Wernher von Braun, who developed the V-2 rocket. He played a significant role in the development of the American space program by creating the Saturn V rocket, which launched the Apollo missions to the moon. Operation Paperclip was a controversial program that raised many ethical questions about the morality of hiring former enemies and overlooking their many crimes. Supporters of the program argued that it was necessary for the Cold War to advance American technologies. Critics of the program denounced it as a betrayal of both justice and human rights. Do you think Operation Paperclip was justified? Let us know in the comments and be sure to subscribe to the channel. 4. The Crepe Operation. The Crepe Operation was a mission that aimed to kidnap a German general in Crete during World War II. The assignment was carried out by a team of British Special Operations Executive (SOE) agents, along with some Greek resistance fighters. The SOE was a secret organization that conducted sabotage, espionage, and guerrilla warfare from right behind the enemy lines. In Crete, the SOE supported the local resistance groups that had been fighting against the German occupation since 1941. The biggest target of the operation was General Heinrich Crepe, the commander of the 22nd Air Landing Infantry Division, who replaced the notorious General Friedrich Wilhelm Müller back in March 1944. Müller was known for his brutal treatment of the Cretan population. The leader of the Crepe mission was Major Patrick Leigh Fermor, an SOE officer who'd been living in Crete since the start of the war. He was joined by Captain William Stanley Moss, another officer, and two Cretan guides, Manolis Patarakis and Georgios Tirakis. The team hatched a plan to ambush Crepe's car on his way from his home to the headquarters in Heraklion. On April 26, 1944, late at night, they stopped the car at a roadblock and overpowered Crepe and his driver. Leiferma and Moss put on German uniforms and drove the car past multiple checkpoints, while Patorakis and Tarakis followed behind with Crape tied up in the back seat. The team then abandoned the car near Anogia and continued the journey on foot across the mountains, evading thousands of German soldiers who were searching for them. They were helped by a few Cretans, who provided food, shelter, and guides along their path. On May 14, 1944, after 18 days of trekking through the countryside, they reached the southern coast of Crete, where they were picked up by a British motorboat and taken to Egypt. Crape was later interrogated and sent to a prisoner of war camp across the sea in Canada. The operation was a huge propaganda boost win for the Allies and a morale boost for the Cretans. It also demonstrated the courage and keen skill of the SOE agents and their Greek allies. 3. Operation Corona. Operation Corona was a British Air Force strategy meant to confuse and disrupt German night fighter defenses during the Second World War. British troops used radio deception and electronic countermeasures to make false targets and jam German communications. The British had a secret service that analyzed German radio transmissions. They learned how the Germans operated their night fighter system, which relied heavily on ground-based radar stations and radio guidance to direct fighters. The English decided to exploit this system through Operation Corona, which involved sending specially equipped aircraft ahead of their main bomber force. These planes, called Mandrel, Moonshine, and Tinsel, had different roles and equipment than typical fighters. Mandrel aircraft held powerful transmitters that jammed the German radar frequencies, creating a window of interference that masked the bomber's stream. Moonshine aircraft carried devices that mimicked the radar returns of large bomber formations, creating false targets. Tinsel aircraft broadcast noises on German radio channels, creating confusion for the enemy's ground controllers. Operation Corona was first utilized in July 1943 during the Battle of Hamburg and was very effective. It reduced the losses of the British bombers and increased the damage inflicted on the German cities. It also forced the Nazis to change their tactics, which gave the British an advantage in the war. Corona was a clever and innovative use of radio deception and electronic warfare by England. It demonstrated their superior intelligence and technology over the German night fighter system. It also contributed to the strategic bombing campaign that weakened the entirety of the German war effort. 2. Operation Valkyrie. Operation Valkyrie's goal was to assassinate Adolf Hitler and overthrow the Nazi regime. It was devised by a group of anti-Nazi conspirators within the German army and civilian government and was led by Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg. The plan involved hiding a bomb in Hitler's headquarters, the Wolf's Lair, and using the reserve army to gain control of key locations and arrest major Nazi leaders. The conspirators hoped to build a new government that would negotiate an end to the war. The plot was launched on July 20, 1944, when Stauffenberg put a briefcase with explosives near Hitler during a military conference. Sadly, the bomb failed to kill Hitler, who survived with some minor injuries. The coup attempt also failed, since the reserve army did not receive clear orders and many officers were loyal to Hitler. The conspirators were quickly executed, along with hundreds of others who had suspected involvement. Operation Valkyrie was the most famous and ambitious attempt to resist Hitler from inside Germany, but it ultimately failed due to poor planning. 1. HAL Team. In the last months of World War II, a small team of American soldiers and civilians launched a secret mission to collect valuable map data from the Nazis. Their goal was to help the Allied forces get further into Germany and prepare for the reconstruction of Europe. The team, which was called HAL Team, was led by Major Floyd W. Howe, a civil engineer who'd surveyed the American West and the South American rainforest before the war started. He was joined by 4 other civilians and 10 enlisted men, some of them who were refugees from Nazi Germany. They had special passes that let them move freely in the combat zone and access map-related materials. HAL Team searched for maps, aerial photographs, survey data, and more in libraries, archives, universities, factories, and even private homes. They gained access to thousands of documents, some of which were marked confidential in German. They also interrogated German map makers and some of their equipment. they sent their findings over to Washington, where they were analyzed and used for military purposes. The team's work had a significant impact on the war. They helped the Allies' forces plan their attacks and avoid enemy traps. They also offered valuable information for the creation of new boundaries and settlements. They uncovered Nazi plans for expansion and exploitation of resources in Africa and Asia. They even discovered a secret Nazi base built in Antarctica. HAL Team's mission was one of the most successful intelligence operations in the entire war, yet it remained secret for decades. The team members received little recognition for their service. Some of them continued their careers in mapping and surveying after the war, while others pursued different paths in life. Thanks for watching. Let us know which secret mission you like the best in the comments. And before you go, hit that subscribe button. See you next time. Bye.